Through the miracle of cyberspace, we are speaking to England. Are these two authors are you in Essex right now, or where are you?
No, we're in Devon.
Devon, in the
Where?
West Country.
Can you hear us?
You're in Devon?
Yeah,
We're in
that's
Devon.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, I couldn't
Yes.
hear. You got to get the sound up so we can hear you.
Right.
Okay, I know you used to live in Essex. You're not speaking from Essex right now then, are you?
No.
Okay. Now that's a little louder. Okay. All right. But these are two of our authors that live in England, and we are now publishing their 5th book. So we've done a lot of work with them over the many years. And those of you who know my work with Jesus and the Essenes, that book, and They Walk with Jesus. This has been many years ago now that we started working with Stuart and Joanna. And Joanna was a hypnotist that lives in England. And Stuart is the writer, but he ended up being more than that before it was done. And they wrote a book that she had got through many people that she'd hypnotized and took back to the same time period that I found when Jesus was living with the Essenes. She didn't know anything about my book at all, but yet they continued the same story and found more information. What is that? Okay. They found more information and continued on with it. And I think it was really good validation that they were finding the same things that I found. And they wrote the book on the Essenes, the Children of the Light. That was the first one that we published of theirs. And it took a while to get it done. We had to go through many, many revisions and suggestions back and forth before the book was ready to go. You remember that, don't you, Stuart?
Yes, it was quite a process.
Okay. But it took quite a while to get the final manuscript. But the amazing thing is that they didn't get the information through just one person. I think it ended up you found about 8 or 9 people, wasn't it?
About 7 people. Yeah, people. Yeah, it was 7 people.
That all were at the same time period, and they all were the different characters. And they all corroborated the story and filled in the entire story. So that made it amazing, and she put the pieces of the puzzle together. See, I'm going to introduce you, and then I'm going to let you take over then. But that was the first book we did with them. Then after that, they found more information about Mary Magdalene. And this is called The Power of the Magdalene. And it's about Mary Magdalene's experiences with the women disciples. Because she was the one that had the control, but she was over the women disciples that Jesus had. He had 12 women disciples also. And so this book is about their experiences in the whole life of Jesus at that time period. And another book we published of theirs is called Beyond Limitations. This is about co-creation and creating your reality. And this one here just came out this week, is their book about Atlantis. So all of their books are done pretty much like mine was with hypnosis. And we are publishing another one this next year about Mary Magdalene's teachings and what her and Jesus were teaching at the time. So it just keeps growing. That'll be 5 books by Stuart Wilson and Joanna Prentis. Now, we're going to hope this is going to work. This is Skype, and we're hoping it's going to be able to understand them. And they're going to be talking among themselves, and then we will have questions from the audience. But there's a lot of subject matter here that you can discuss with them. Okay, be Stuart and Joanna in England. Okay.
Okay, Dolores, I hope you can hear us. Can you hear us all right? Yes, fine. We're very happy to be able to connect with you today and speak with you. And the first thing I'd like to do is ask Joanna, would you like to start by telling us a little about yourself?
Hello, everybody. I'm very pleased to see you all here today. I will try and speak slowly, so because if I speak fast, I think you might find it hard to hear me. Anyway, I started off my life in India and lived there till I was 3, and then I went to live in Scotland, and I had most of my education there. And later I travelled quite extensively, and I lived in Hong Kong, and then I had 10 years in Australia, which introduced me to the sort of metaphysical, the alternative. I got deeply into alternative therapy, homeopathy, healing there. Later I came back to Britain, and it was while I was here that I got interested in alternative education and trained to be a Montessori teacher. Also, later I went on to do a diploma in humanistic psychology, and I also studied different healing modalities. So, Stuart, would you like to tell us something about yourself?
Yes, that's fine. I'll try to do that. Well, I came from a background in the esoteric tradition. Blavatsky, Alice Bailey, and Steiner. And I went on to explore the New Age and the New Consciousness. I think the two things that really helped me to change and move on, above all else, were channeling, the process of channeling, and exploring past lives too, which opened a window on many worlds that before I started this, I had no idea existed. Joanna, would you like to tell us now how all this past life work began?
When I was studying humanistic psychology, as I had already remembered past lives for myself in dreams, in meeting people, in going certain places, I found that just doing humanistic psychology was rather narrow, but it's an excellent basis. And I went on then to do hypnosis and past life with Ursula Markham. I had been doing past life. You hearing me all right? Okay. I had been in past life for several years when a whole set of extremely interesting past life relived by some of my clients and Stuart, and this led us to develop the books. Not this were scenes, but there was a whole group that came that were scenes and had major parts. When people relived their lives with Joshua, there was the most extraordinary and beautiful energy in the book. So, Stuart, would you like to?
Yes, I'll take it from there. That brings us really to our first book, The Essenes, Children of the Light. We had 7 subjects for that, 7 past life subjects. And to us, the fascinating thing was that their stories started to interconnect. They started to cover the same ground sometimes from slightly different perceptions, but the material was common, and that moved the story on in ways that were highly significant. The 2 main subjects were my character at that time. He was called Daniel. He was an elder in one of the Essene communities, not the very big community in Qumran. He was an elder in the community at Hebron to the west of the Dead Sea. And his very close friend was Joseph of Arimathea. a very major player in the drama by any standards. And the fact that these two close friends made it possible for us to overcome the secrecy problem. This has been a problem for many people who've investigated the Essenes over the years. Many of them took vows of secrecy, and that hampered the investigations to a considerable extent. As time went on, we learned that there were 9 Essene communities from Alexandria in Egypt right up to the Damascus community, one of the original ones in Syria. And most of these communities were indeed in Israel. Within the communities, there was a mix of Essene priests and lay brothers and families also with children. It was a very lively place in all of these communities. The priests, the Essene priests, only studied the Torah, the Jewish law. The lay brothers were much more liberal and wide-ranging in the material which they studied. They studied Egyptian mystery school material, much of which focused upon the Merkabah and the ascension process. They studied Pythagorean material, which came from Greece. The Pythagoreans were very well established throughout the Middle East at that time, and so it gave them an opportunity to study that material. And there was Zoroastrian material from Persia, and indeed many of the ceremonies, including baptism in water, that can be traced to original Zoroastrian roots as well. The Essene communities were originally set up by a group who are known as the Kalu.
Can you tell us about
The Kalu are a fascinating people. I first encountered the name through the book by Dolores, which is called Jesus and the Essenes. There, we learned the outline of what the Kalu were involved in. They were a very ancient people. They were ancient even 2,000 years ago. Really, they were the last remnants of the Atlantean people, who were by that time only scattered travelers. They were wanderers who traveled continuously from community to community, and they were there to be as counselors and advisors to the Essenes, and also to be, in a way, intermediaries, because they took their instructions in turn from the order of Melchizedek.
So, who was the order of Melchizedek?
Well, if the Kalu were mysterious, then the order of Melchizedek were even more mysterious and simply maintained a very low profile indeed. They were described by my character, Daniel, as a galactic service order. They were teachers who worked in many locations, many star systems around the galaxy, and it was the Melchizedeks who pointed out that one of the key factors for the Essenes would be the establishment of an energy line system based on what we would call ley lines, and suitably strengthened and improved through the use of crystals. So that was a major task for the Essenes to carry out. They spoke also of the coming teacher. Finally, towards the end of their work with the Essenes, there was a meeting in a cave where the senior Melchizedek on planet Earth attended the meeting and thanked the Essenes for all their work over many decades in supporting the teacher of righteousness.
So, how did the work change into the second book?
The second book was really a major leap forward for us, a big development from the first book. The first book had been entirely based on past life work and some commentary by ourselves and a little research after the past life sessions were over, but it was very much based on information from past life sources. The second was very different because by then we had contacted an angelic source called Alariel and were able to dialogue with him in order to reach areas in the text that we were otherwise not be able to reach. We contacted Alariel actually when we were doing research on Atlantis, and we'll come to that area a little later on, but it was through past life process that we managed to contact this angelic source, and from that point on I was able to channel him and get information from him when we needed to fill in the gaps in our knowledge, because past life is a wonderful research process, but there are always areas that you simply cannot get access to because you cannot get hold of the right people in the right place at the right time. So it was really useful to have a supplementary source who would increase the information and be able to fill in all those gaps. If I give an example of the gap, we had no idea when we produced the first book how many female disciples there were. Yes, the idea of female disciples was there, but we weren't able to put any number on that. And if you had asked anyone at the time, like Daniel, how many female disciples there were, he might have said, oh, well, there are many. And that wouldn't have helped us very much. But when we had Alariel as a source, we were able to ask him. And he told us that Jesus had asked the Essenes to set themselves up on a balanced basis, and they had asked, they had gone forward always on a balanced basis. When it came to the Essene teacher of righteousness, who was Jesus, he was determined to continue in that tradition. So he set up his discipleship on a completely balanced basis, 72 female disciples, 72 male disciples. And so that's the significant number of 144, one of the big symbolic significant numbers. And these were set up in, 72 was set up in 6 circles of 12. And it's really the first circle of 12, which is the most significant one. There's Mary Anna, which is the full name of Mother Mary, and Mary Magdalene. So the two Marys. There was Helena Salome and Mary Jacobi, the sisters of Mary Anna. There was Mary Jacobi's daughter Abigail, then Martha of Bethany and her sister Mary, Laura Clare, the sister of Jeshua, and then Mary, Joanna and Sarah, Lois, Salome and Susanna Mary. These were 4 cousins of Jeshua. So this is very clearly a close-knit family group.
Sounds a bit like nepotism.
Well, they were all linked together within this group, but it had been set up that way. It was realized from the beginning they would have a much more difficult job than the male disciples. In Jewish society at that time, 2,000 years ago, deeply patriarchal society, it was not accepted at that time that a woman could be a spiritual teacher. So that was something they had to contend with. If they did not support each other and band together and stand together, they would not have been able to make their way and become teachers in their own right and be able to influence events in the way that they actually did. When it was known the teacher of righteousness, Jeshua, was going to come to the earth, the angels worked together with the souls of these people before their incarnations began to set up the extended family group, so they would all have links together at a family level. They would grow up together, many of them, and have close friendships, which would help them when they actually came to do their work, because they were members of an extended family. So it was many souls that followed their teacher, Jeshua, through many lives. And the angels worked to bring this whole family together.
Yes, I think that's the big thing about doing past life work. You keep meeting up old friends.
Well, it's nice, isn't it? The faces change, but you know, very often the energies tell you where your old friends are, and you may meet someone, and you know instinctively that you can trust this person, and you've only known them 5 minutes, because you recognize the energy. The face may be quite, but the energy goes on from lifetime after lifetime and connects these old friends, and it's a wonderful thing to meet up again with people who you haven't seen, sometimes for many centuries. It's really a vast team effort that made Jeshua's work possible.
What else does the book of Magdalene talk about?
Well, it takes us into areas that certainly go beyond our first book. There's a big section on the new children. It starts with the Indigos, where there was the main wave coming in from 1970. Then the Crystal Children, the main wave came in from 1990. And the Rainbow Children, the main wave from 2000. Indigo, Crystal, and Rainbow are references to the appearance of their auras.
I don't actually see these categories as being so rigid. Some of these children can be a mixture of all. They could be a rainbow with a bit of crystal, or they could be rainbow with indigo.
Yes, I agree. One wave flows into another, and it is possible for a soul to start as an indigo and through expanding the consciousness, move on to be a crystal and move on to be a rainbow. So you could start indigo and move through the whole sequence. And it's these are very broad classifications. They're not absolutely rigid classifications. So we'd like to tell us now, Joanna, about the parenting of the new children, please.
Well, that is a very big subject,
Yes.
but I'll keep it brief. These children, they're very awake, they're very aware, they sense energy, and they're very multisensory. And they might start remembering past lives because they're not actually very veiled about their past when they're born. They also probably see auras, or as my daughter called it, coloured lights around people, and they see that as normal. They might hear spirit people, and if your child has any of these, just calmly accept it. Don't sort of say, well, no, it's not like that. Just be interested, but don't sort of over question them. Now, these children can't take too much noise. Sometimes they find it very difficult being in school, concentrating, because the noise level is too great for them. Some of them have very acute hearing. So when that happens, they'll kind of switch off, and you'll see a sort of like you can't get through to them. It's just a sign that they've had enough for the day. The comment on sensitivity, my granddaughter Charlotte, we went to the dentist with her mother, and she was used to going to the dentist, and her mother was just going for her checkup. Charlotte was playing happily in the dentist's reception room, and she'd been before, and we were called. And as we reached the dentist's room, she suddenly went into a funk. She was terrified. No, I can't go now. Please, Granny, take me home. And I thought, what is happening? And then I got it. Her mother wasn't frightened, but she must have picked up on the fear of the previous person in the dentist chair. So I just had to take her away and just calm her down, and eventually we got her in. But that's just an example of what might happen with your new wave child. You've got to be very accepting of whatever it is.
Yes, that's certainly a major factor of their sensitivity. Many crystal children are telepathic. They have remarkable healing skills sometimes, and some have skills of consciousness. And I can give an instance of that in the way that many crystal children read books. This may not be so apparent when they're very young, but as they move through their education, they will begin more and more to read books in an advanced way. This is not speed reading. This is a much more sophisticated way of reading books. And what a crystal child will do, they will begin to read what is on the page, but at the same time they're tuning into the essential energy of the book. The author of the book, through working on it and focusing on it intensely, has actually implanted an energy around the book, which anyone who is sensitive can pick up. And if you have a non-fiction book, there may only be 6 or 7 ideas in the book, or if it's a very complex book, perhaps 25, 30 ideas. Now, what a crystal child will do is they will tune into the energy of the book, and they will start skipping the pages where they don't pick up any energy relating to ideas. When they sense an idea coming, because the energy increases and there's an energy spike, they will read the energy spike. That's the part of the book that talks about an idea. Then when that spike subsides, they will start skipping pages again, maybe 10 or 20 pages at a time. This is not like speed reading. They don't read every page. And then they will only start to read again when they sense there's an energy spike building, the energy is building up, and there's another major idea being presented. They will read the material around that idea, and then when that idea is delivered, they will simply skip the idea-free pages that follow. So, in fact,
It's all right.
in fact, they're reading it in a very different way to conventional reading of books, and they have many skills in consciousness, and that is just one example. Would you like to tell us now, Joanna, about the educating of the new children?
Well, I'll only touch on it briefly because, again, it's a very big subject. But basically, most of children will go through a conventional education, and they've agreed to do this, and they'll learn, from this process. But I feel that a lot are going to be rather switched off and rather bored. I mean, I don't really know about your education system in America, so I'm really talking more about here. But I think it's possible, I presumably you have them in the States, a Montessori or Steiner education is better because it is more holistic. And also, obviously I favour Montessori because I'm taught to be a Montessori teacher, because Montessori is very multi-sensory, and small children, I'm not talking about education later on, early education, most children learn best by being multi-sensory, like using all the senses. But also another form of education could be through an alternative school, and I'm sure you've got some of those in America as we do here. These alternative schools based the ideas of John Holt, who you might be familiar with. I think he was an American, and Neil Summerfield here in Britain. And at these alternative schools, they have the chance to be more autonomous. And I think really these children, prefer that setup rather than being told to, sit down and listen. They like to be, I think the word would be proactive. Yes?
Absolutely. And in the situation where you have, for example, crystal children who are in the majority in their class, they may in effect start to take over the process through which their education is conducted. They will start to suggest improvements in the curriculum. They may start to suggest other ways of teaching. They may actually interact with the teachers in ways that the teaching profession at the present time has not experienced so far. I'd like just to talk a little bit now about another aspect of Power of the Magdalene, which was the contribution made by our friend Jennifer Cruz. She contributed a whole chapter on understanding the new children, because Jenny has been working over a period of time in this particular area in a very professional way. And the major thing to say about Jennifer Cruz's contribution is her discovery that the new children connect with energy first and the physical world second. So energy is primary for them. That is the main thing for them. Then there is a whole section in Power of the Magdalene on the new world and the new consciousness. And this is what Alaric says about that subject. The new world will be based on cooperation rather than competition, sharing rather than accumulating, oneness rather than separation. Sharing rather than accumulating. Well, I think the bank's got some way to go on that one. So that is that, and perhaps I should move on now to talk about our third book, which is called Beyond Limitations, The Power of Conscious Co-Creation. This is entirely channel material, and it answers one big question: how do we create our own reality? In talking about the creative process, Alariel said, creating a better reality is not just something that you do, a skill that you exercise. It's the way you learn and grow as human beings. Alariel talks about 3 levels of reality creation. Personal reality creation, that is creating at the level of the personality, and co-creation, creating reality at the level of the soul, and finally, instantaneous creation, creating reality at the level of the spirit. And he gives information on all these 3 levels. Of course, we have been creating at the level of the personality for many, many centuries now, and we have got quite used to it. But we're being challenged to look at other ways that we may create our own reality. And Alariel talks about 2012 as moving from personal reality creation to co-creation. In co-creation, one works basically with the aim of creating a reality in which the good of all beings is respected. That is a big step forward to the situation for many people at this time. And Alariel says, if you wish to change your life experience, start by changing your consciousness.
We have some exciting news for you, which Doris is already touched on, and that is that our new book, Atlantis and the New Consciousness, has managed to be published, especially for you for this.
Yes, wonderful news. Atlantis and Consciousness just out. And it focuses, first of all, on a life I had well before the Golden Age as an architect called Arnquell. And we got a whole raft of interesting information from this architect. He arrived on planet Earth in an unusual way. His spacecraft, which was coming from Sirius, was sabotaged. He didn't expect to arrive in such a traumatic way. but the remaining people in his party, because they crashed initially, and the remaining members of the party did make their way to Atlantis. It was a difficult journey. But then he had an interesting life when he was there. And that is quite a story, really, of how the Syrians adapted to the conditions on Atlantis. But we wanted, of course, to explore the Golden Age too. Many people have told us about how wonderful the Golden Age in Atlantis was. And so we were lucky in a way. We were able to do a shared session with 3 people experiencing the same life. This, I have to tell you, is most unusual. Mostly, it's a one-to-one process when you do past life. There is the therapist, the facilitator, and the past life subject. Here, in effect, there were 3 of us experiencing the same life. And this was Joanna, a friend of ours called Catherine Mary, and myself.
Catherine Mary is actually one of Dolores' students.
And Catherine Mary is one of Dolores' students and has followed on in that way. So this shared life took us to a number of Atlantean temples. The temples were in many ways the center of the whole life of Atlantean civilization. And we saw a great priestess there in one particular temple ceremony. And after the session, Alaria was able to tell us that this priestess was actually a female incarnation of Jeshua. Many people talk about the previous lives of Jesus, as for example, Zend, the father of Zoroaster, but only male lives are usually quoted when they are researching this area. In fact, there was at least one female life, this priestess in Atlantis. So that information may surprise certainly a lot of people. The book goes on to talk about the transformation process, and Alario gives 12 principles of transformation. I'll just read 2 of these to give you an idea of what they're like. And the first one goes like this. Light is the symbol of transformation, and the heart is the focal point in the process of change. And then moving on to another principle, he says, it is important to know who you've been in order to understand who you are. It is equally important to let go of the drama of your past lives and focus on being here now. So these things are in balance. Many people are exploring past lives. Many people are focusing in resolving past life energies and being more increasingly here now, because that's the way we can expand our consciousness, transform, and move on. So these 2 things are equally important. They're operating on very different levels. So would you like to sum up things now? I know, would you like to give your summary?
Right. Well, we have been on some journey, as I'm sure the rest of the audience out there have been too, because it's been quite a what do we call it?
A roller coaster?
A roller coaster.
It's been a roller coaster from time to time. Yes.
Like Dolores, we have been very much led. Gradually, we've learned more and more concepts, and it has been like at school, moving up from grade to grade, each grade getting more and more complex ideas, which we would not have been able to understand when we first started this process and writing these books. The most important things, though, to remember is the temple of God is in the heart, and the way of love as taught by Joshua and Mary Magdalene. As Joshua said to me, my spirit practice is simple. It is one unconditional love, and love thy neighbor as thyself. So would you like to sum up your experience?
Yes, I will try to. I think producing these books has been a whole journey for us. We started off not knowing, frankly, very much of the history of that time in Israel 2,000 years ago. And gradually pieces of the jigsaw presented themselves as more and more people came to do past lives with us. And we've now reached a point where not only have people from the United Kingdom coming, but we, for example, last Tuesday, we had a lady coming from Canada. We have people coming from America all the time. We have people coming from Australia. And through a process where we employ an interpreter, we've actually done past lives in German language and Spanish language. People from Spain and Germany came. We obviously had to have an interpreter there. We are not fluent in these languages. So we've been seeing from European countries, from North America, from Australia, as well as the United Kingdom. So it's been a wide range of people coming in, and they all bring their own particular perceptions and their own particular insights into the developing story. We feel that it's a very big story. The Essenes story itself is vast. Many, many people worked in those communities over the period that the Essenes were active. But the Essenes went on. In time, those souls went on to be Cathars and Franciscans, and eventually in the modern age, they went on to be light workers. So it's actually a story with a number of facets. And it's a very interesting story to unroll little by little. It has been like putting in pieces of the jigsaw. But looking back, it strikes me that how even very obvious things didn't come to our knowledge until very late in the process, quite recently. And a very good example of that is Mary Magdalene's name. We had been asking about the parentage of Mary Magdalene, who her parents were, and where exactly she came from, what her full name was. We'd asked all these things for over a period of time. But it was over about 6 months ago that we finally got on these answers. And Allah was then able to tell us in detail the questions we really wanted to know, and revealed that Mary's full name is Miriam Anne, A-N-N-E, of Tyana. Tyana is in the south central region of Turkey, an area between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean, but at that time was part of the old Hittite kingdom, a very ancient kingdom. Her family were of the tribe of Benjamin. They had traveled widely and finally settled in Tyana. And her father, who was called James, was a wealthy Jewish merchant, and he was a friend of Joseph of Arimathea. When wealthy Jewish merchants traveled around the Middle East at that time, they frequented certain watering holes, shall we say, and met each other upon the road. And so it's quite natural that Joseph should meet James. But even more interesting, Mary Magdalene's grandfather was Balthazar, one of the three wise men. Balthazar was Persian. It was unusual for people to marry into the family from outside of the Jewish tradition, but it did happen. And in this case, this was an example of a very substantial Persian sage marrying into an established Jewish family. Balthazar had a big soul link with Joseph of Arimathea. And as Mary Magdalene's father dies when she is only 8 years old, Joseph then goes to Tyana and speaks to the family and explains his link with both Balthasar and James. They are families already aware of this link. Balthasar had spoken highly of Joseph, and Joseph asked to be able to adopt Mary. So the family agreed, and Joseph then takes the 8-year-old Mary Magdalene by ship back to Israel. They go to his long house in Jerusalem, and a regular visitor to that house is the 11-year-old Jeshua. Jeshua is his nephew. So natural that he should visit his uncle. So Jeshua is able to meet Mary Magdalene, 8-year-old Mary, and Alariel says they have one magical year together, and during that time they were able to explore the deep spiritual bond they have together. They realize they have past life connections, and that all this starts to come into focus for them during that year. At the end of that year, Jeshua is then 12 years old, and he goes off on his major travels, culminating in his journey down the Old Silk Road from Damascus down the Old Silk Road to India. At that time, Mary is 9 years old, and she goes for training to the Isis temple in Alexandria. And so this is a vital piece of information on Mary Magdalene. It really shifts her from being a stranger and an outsider, and pushes her as well as the inner circle of Jeshua. Basically, they go off to do their extensive training. They become very substantial initiates, and Alariel has told me what happens when Jeshua comes back. Mary Magdalene returns to Joseph's house in Jerusalem 2 weeks before Jeshua will come back. By that time, she is not only a priestess of Isis, she is a high priestess of Isis. She's a very substantial initiate in her own right. And she is able to merge with the consciousness of Jeshua and tell exactly where he is on his travels on the road. He has disembarked. Then when he disembarked from the ship, one of Joseph's ships, bringing him back on the coast of Israel, she knows exactly where he is on the road from the coast leading to Jerusalem. She takes a small picture and goes out of Jerusalem and stops at a village a little to the west of Jerusalem and waits there for Jeshua to come. And when Jeshua comes, we can imagine it is hot, and it is a very welcoming thing to have someone meet you, and she puts the picture into the well, and
Stuart,
to drink.
Stuart, Johanna, this is a very bad reception, and it's hard to understand and it's hard to see.
It's hard to understand.
Well, what I was thinking, maybe if we went to questions, it would be better. What do you
Well,
think?
maybe
It is
we
hard to
could-
follow it, isn't it?
Yes, I'd be
See,
happy to
because
go to-
the sound is delayed and it seems to be choppy and the picture is not good. So if it's okay, can we go to questions? Maybe that will be, maybe we'll be able to understand
Maybe that's a
better
bit
if we
better.
do
Yes,
that.
let's do that. Agreed. Yes.
Do you think that's better? Because maybe we can understand him better when we go to the questions and answers. Because I know I'm having trouble up here, and I think the rest of you are too. It may just be the Skype is where the problem is. But anyway, they have a great deal of information about the life of Jesus and about Mary Magdalene and the crucifixion, what really happened in the crucifixion, and about Mary Magdalene and Jesus' life together. So maybe if we could go to the questions and answers and go to those points. Would that be okay?
Yes,
Yeah,
fine.
fine.
Please do.
Okay, because maybe that'll be easier to understand that way. And they said when you come up and you can line up here to ask questions, and they said to speak right into the microphone so they can hear you better. Anybody wants any questions about these subjects? I thought there'd be, okay. Okay, come on up here then, okay. See, I've read the book, so I know what's in there. There's a great deal of information in it. It's not your fault, Stuart and Joanna, it's the electronics
we're struggling
and the
with
technology.
the technology.
It's the technology, okay.
It's the technology, yeah.
Yeah, let's see if this works better.
It's very nice to meet y'all both this way. I read both of your books on the Essenes.
Right.
Okay, I read both the books, and
Good.
my question is, what happened to I think it's Jesus, when after the crucifixion, where did he go?
Where did he go? That's a very good question. That's a very good question. What happened was that he was taken out of Jerusalem secretly, and he managed to get safely to the coast of Israel, and he was taken by ship to Cyprus. On Cyprus, Joseph, the island of Cyprus, Joseph had a large estate and a large villa, and Jesus rested there and recuperated. It took him a long time to rest and recuperate and gather his strength again. And after he was fully recuperated, he took another ship and got to what is now Syria, and traveled overland to Damascus. And at Damascus, he went down the journey along the old Silk Road, which took him to India, because between the ages of 12 and 30, he had already been to India. He had already studied their systems. He had been to one or two other countries bordering on India. He had traveled throughout that area, and he wished to go back there because he knew his work from that point would be in India. It was simply too dangerous for him to continue in the Middle East or even in Britain, where Joseph Arimathea settled, because if any of the Pharisees had realized that Jesus had survived the cross, they would have sent assassin out to kill him. It was too dangerous for him to continue in the Middle East or anywhere in Europe. So, in a sense, he had to find another place to continue his work in, and he went back to India, partly because he had connected in his early life, in his young life, with a great teacher which we know as Babaji. Babaji had told him that the guru system, disciple and guru system in India had started to break down and decay, and Babaji had asked him to go around India to revive this system. So Jeshua set about doing this in company with the disciple Thomas, who by another route had also reached India. So they went around India reviving the old guru system. What had begun to happen there is the gurus were not letting go of their power, and even when a disciple was ready to move up to the status of the guru, he was not being able to do that. So they revived the whole system of teaching there. And they also did some work on the sacred sites of India, which were very ancient indeed. So that's really what happened to Jeshua. He was able to go and have a complete new area of his life of service. And by that time, he was able to bilocate very freely. So he could bilocate and connect with Mary Magdalene, with Mother Mary, Mary Anna, the other members of his close family, various disciples at various times. He could bilocate, appear, and then disappear, because bilocation is really a projection of the physical body. And he was able to do that, and distance is no obstacle at all to the bilocation process. He was able to continue his teaching in that way, but he couldn't physically continue in Europe or the Middle East at that point.
Okay. I have two questions, and they both would be short answers.
Okay.
First, I'm the 7 people that you said you worked with that gave you the information about the Essenes. I'm wondering,
Yes.
did they have any recognition of each other in this life? Was
Yes.
there any feeling that they knew each other during that time period?
Indeed. Can I answer that question first? Yes. In fact, two of these people, that there was 2 people that were close friends. The character was Joseph, and my character were close friends, and John and Roberta were also close friends. So the people who were friends 2,000 years ago are still friends. The other people, one of them knew all 4 of us, so that was number 5, and the other 2 were relatively low-key. They were the outer circle of the friendship in this life rather than very close friends. But people who have bonds of friendship tend to have bonds of friendship lasting for many lives. Yes, did you have another question?
Yes, the other one is, in any of your channeling or any of the information that you've gotten about Mary, did you get any confirmations of the stories that she was supposed to have traveled to France and had a daughter there by the name of Sarah?
Magdalene.
Yes, Mary Magdalene, we can confirm that her daughter was Sarah, but you appreciate that Sarah is a designation, it's not a name. Sarah simply means princess. Her real name was Anna. Anna was the name of the grandmother of Jeshua. So she took the grandmother's name and became Sarah Anna, which simply means Princess Anna. But as we explain in Power of the Magdalene, this child was actually born by light conception, so she's genetically only the child of Mary Magdalene. This is something that has been misunderstood by many people over time. They have assumed that their daughter was genetically the child of both Jeshua and Mary. In fact, she is physically, genetically the child of Mary Magdalene only because the Spirit provides the other double strand of DNA in a light conception process. Light conception was well known to the mystery schools in the Middle East at that time. Certainly in the Egyptian mystery school, it was very well known indeed, but it's simply that the early church fathers did not understand it. And they tried to, in a sense, corner the market in that and make it a unique feature of Jesus himself. But it was actually something that was well known within all the mystery schools of that time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Stuart, let me expand on that about Mary Magdalene in southern France, because I went to southern France this last year because we have the story that Mary Magdalene and the other Marys did land at Sainte-Marie-de-la-Mar in the south of France, and they have the church there. And in the church, they kept talking about Mary Magdalene and the women disciples, and that is where the Christianity began. And it was very interesting. This is a Catholic church, but in their brochures about Sainte Marie de la Mar, they said it must be remembered that the Christian church was begun by women. And she founded the Christian church in the southern part of France. And that was, they know it. They have the story there in the church. They have the pictures of all of it. Not officially recognized in Rome, but that was what it said. I don't know if you've been there or not, Sainte Marie de la Mar, where they
no,
have the
I haven't,
tributes.
but I have a friend, Catherine Mary Latour, who in fact, as she's named as Kathy Welshman, took part in a number of regression processes with us. She's mentioned in both the Power of the Magdalene and the Atlantis book. And Catherine Mary is currently in France, in Languedoc. The difficult thing to research in that area is exactly, everyone knows that by legend that she wound up in the high Languedoc region. And everyone knows, as you say, she came ashore from the Mediterranean at that point. The difficulty is no one knows exactly what was her route, her journey from landing to the high Languedoc. And Catherine Mary is trying to research that. And incidentally, if anyone has a contact in France who would like to help Catherine Mary with this research work, please could they write to me through my website, our website, foundationforcrystalchildren.com, because Catherine Mary would love to have some help from people who are actually in France and are familiar with the language. She speaks a little French, only a little, because she's trying to trace this track from Les Trois Maries sur la Mer right up into the high Languedoc. And there are a number of potential sites on the way, but it's interesting you mentioned the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is very ambivalent about Mary Magdalene.
Oh, yeah.
She was basically, in a sense, the first modern woman. She was courageous, she was empowered, and she didn't suffer fools gladly. And this has made her a very difficult figure for the Catholic Church to handle.
Yeah, they
They
wanted
would
her to
much
be
rather
presented
focus
as
on
a
Mother Mary,
prostitute.
who was perceived
sorry.
to be a much more low-key and obedient lady. In fact, she was a high initiate too. So what happened is that when the power in the Catholic Church shifted from France, because there were popes in France at one time, it shifted to Italy. Then the popes in Italy started to bear down upon the Languedoc region and the Cathars, because really that family group, and it was a family group which settled in southern France, that fed into the whole culture of the area, and they became Cathars. The Cathars were the last flowering of that particular culture. And that wasn't popular with the Roman end of the Catholic Church.
Okay, I wrote about this, and that's why I wanted to go find it myself. And that the Catholic Church wanted people to think that Mary Magdalene was a prostitute. Actually, she was a very high educated priestess by Egypt, and she had great knowledge. This is why the disciples were jealous of her, because Jesus could communicate with her, and they didn't like that because they didn't want a woman to be so close to him. But she had wonderful metaphysical knowledge, and that's why they were so close. But so we found that Mary Magdalene founded the church in France, Lazarus founded the church in Spain, and Joseph of Arimathea and the other disciples founded the churches in England by Glastonbury. So that was where it all started. Of course, the church doesn't want you to know all of those things. But when you go there, they have the legends, and they say these legends are real. And we found that in Glastonbury is the holiest place in the world. That's where they are buried. Even Mary, the mother of Jesus, is buried at Glastonbury. And John, the disciple, lived to be over 100 years old. They're all buried there at Glastonbury. It's the holiest place in the world. And the abbey there recognizes these stories. It's the church that doesn't recognize this history. But I thought it was interesting in the brochure at Sainte Marie de la Mar in the church, it said, it must be remembered that women founded the Christian church. And I said, aha, they're recognizing it. I think you agree with me, don't you, Stuart?
That is true. And in fact, many of the early Christian groups would never have survived without very empowered women working and helping them at that time.
Oh, the Roman Catholic Church has recently, I'm not sure the date, has made Mary Magdalene a saint. Don't know whether you've heard that. Hello? A bit of sound.
Okay?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Okay.
Hello.
My question is, did Mary Magdalene and Jesus bilocate to Mount Magazine Mountain in Arkansas? Well, Spirit just asked me to ask that.
Would you like, Dolores, would you like to repeat the question? I couldn't hear it, but
It was,
Did Mary Magdalene and Jesus bilocate their teachings to Mount Magazine, Arkansas?
oh, they bilocated, are you saying they bilocated to a site in Arkansas? Yeah.
Yes, Mount Magazine near Hot Springs, Arkansas, where our crystal mines are.
All right. No, I hadn't heard that. That's a very interesting.
not to Arkansas, but I've heard stories of Jesuit going out to America. I've heard that from American friends.
Yes, yes.
Obviously, because I don't live there, I haven't followed up on that one.
Well, Stuart, that's a story I've never heard, and we live here in Arkansas.
Yes,
so
I
don't
haven't
know.
heard.
Don't
That's
feel
true.
bad if you don't know the answer. It's just there are huge crystal deposits here. That's what she's thinking about.
Yes, yes.
The next question, this is a person from your country. We brought him over here. It's on the wall.
All right.
He came from London. Okay, come on.
Hi, Stuart, Joanna. How are you doing?
Hello.
Hi. My question
How you-
is based upon your comment about Babaji teaching Jesus about 2,000 years ago, and
Yes.
I'm quite interested in that because more recently, probably 100 years ago, probably 150 years ago, Babaji was instrumental in teaching an Indian guru called Lahiri Mahasaya, then Sri Yukteswar, and a guy called Paramahansa Yogananda. And I was wondering if in your investigations you'd come across these characters in some of your hypnosis and other researches at all.
I think Babaji actually was a teacher of many people in the Hindu tradition, and in fact, he was a being who is behind a lot of the teachers. If you dig into many spiritual teachers, you will find that Babaji has been their teacher in the past or has been their teacher's teacher. And significantly different cultures have different names for him. And in the Celtic and Native American tradition, he's called Great Bear. They call Babaji Great Bear. So a number of cultures recognize him, and I think it's quite significant that he returned twice in the 20th century, although I have to tell you there was disagreement as to whether the second Babaji was indeed Babaji. I believe he was, but some people take a different view of that. But he did connect, I think, with the people you mentioned, and he's connected with and taught a large number of beings, yes.
He also was somewhere in the Middle, wasn't he? Somewhere, I'm not quite sure where.
Yes, yes. He has had connections with many spiritual traditions.
But also when he was up school, he was Babaji reincarnated. There was a book written about that, and he probably, on shadow of doubt, was the incarnation of Babaji.
Yes, there are many stories of back and showing that he wasn't Babaji. There was a tradition that he would say certain mantra when he came back. And while the followers of the original Babaji that Yogananda talks about in his book Autobiography of a Yogi, when he went in to see this young man, he seemed to be about 17-year-old, who suddenly appears in this cave. He goes in to see him, not really sure whether this is the real Babaji. And instead of actually saying the words of the mantra filled the room. It was everywhere. It was the walls and the ceiling. It filled the whole room. And there are all sorts of stories like that about how Babaji established his authenticity. Thank you very much for your care.
Thank you. It's great. It's interesting that the Babaji that Stuart and Joanna talk about is the Babaji that Stuart and Joanna talk about is probably well over 2,000 years old, and it's a tribute to the metaphysical work that is there that suggests that they had complete control of the energies surrounding their physical bodies, so they could perpetuate these bodies for a long time. And the fact that Stuart's saying that he totally agrees, this is the same person who's taught these people in India 150 years ago, was the same person who taught Mary Magdalene and Jesus, that sort of justifies it, that it's the same guy, and that the experience and the techniques that were there then are still around. It's just we need to open our eyes and see them. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you.
I was thinking, if it's no more questions, would it be all right if we just stop? Because it has been really difficult to understand. You'll just have a longer break. Is that okay? Okay. Because I know this has been difficult with the technology. And if it's all right, we figured we would stop at this point. And we have the books. There's tremendous amount of information in these books. The Essenes, Children of the Light, and the Power of the Magdalene especially have a great deal of information about Jesus and Mary Magdalene. But because of the way it's going, I think it's better to stop now and then...
We agree.
Is that okay? Because
that's absolutely okay. Thank you very much, Dolores. We have been struggling with the technology.
There's nothing...
Yeah,
it's not your fault. It is the technology. We appreciate you staying up so late.
We are hearing a time-delayed fragment of the sound with only about 1 second out of 3 seconds of the sound being delivered. So it's very confusing for us. We're only getting a fraction of the audio. Okay. We could cope with the picture leaping around if we could hear all the audio.
Okay.
We're only getting a fraction of the sound.
It's strange because when I read my daughter in Australia and in America, I get much better sound quality. So I don't know why this is.
I think it varies from time to time. I think it just varies.
I appreciate you staying up so late over there. I know.
Really appreciate that. Thank you for setting it up.
I know it's late over there, and I appreciate you staying up late to talk to us. Okay, but thanks for doing this. This was an experiment, and we weren't sure how it was going to work. Okay, well, thank you very much. Okay. 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 Because I know it was getting tedious, and I thought there must be something we could do. Maybe the questions would help, and that did help. So if it's okay, you're just going to have a longer break. Is that all right?